Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. Learning Ally, a nonprofit education organization, helps to transform the lives of struggling learners by delivering proven solutions that help students reach their potential. We have a heritage of supporting students with a reading deficit like dyslexia. Our award-winning Human Read audiobook solution helps students in grades 3 through 12 access books they want and need to read to help them succeed. Visit www.learningally.org for more information.
The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Hello and welcome to Empowered Dyslexia Student Edition. I'm your host, Yearout, and today I have a special guest, Chaz Perez. He's a dyslexia advocate, a student mentor, and he helps the youth, a couple in a nonprofit organization. You want to talk to us about you and your nonprofit?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show. I work for an organization called Gentlemen by Choice. It's a community development corporation, and I'm a youth mentor in that space. I also speak into middle schools and high schools, to groups of people, or groups of kids, and I spent about a year in special education as well, in the school district here in Las Vegas, and we focus on mentoring. Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about time in school when you were growing up in the school district.
Yeah, it was tough. I was identified as dyslexic in second grade, but the story I always like to compare or contrast it to was my home life was pretty crazy. You know, there was a day where I had to actually throw a butcher knife at my mother's boyfriend to protect her from being hurt by him, and that was not the worst day of my life. You know, the day that a grown man burned a cigarette on my knee, that was also not the worst day of my life. The worst day of my life was a day in first grade when my teacher told us to get out a piece of paper and write 1 to 10 to prepare for a spelling test. I butchered my numbers and my letters all backwards and crazy, and my teacher, Mrs. Wilson, her name was, came over and checked my work, and she looked at my paper and she's like, "Are you stupid? Not another one of you." And that was sort of a very definitive, defining moment that I had. I couldn't read, year after year, and I didn't really learn how to read with true comprehension until about 7th grade. So school was very, very tough, very tough. So,
I was identified into 7th grade. It was, it's kind of weird because I don't really remember elementary school very much. I was always, I guess, I went to a charter school, there's probably 40 kids in my class, and I was separated into 2 classes, so 20 kids in mine, 20 kids in the other class, and, I was always, one of the smart kids, I guess you could say, but I think I really hit a brick wall in 7th grade, into 6th, start to 7th grade. I started doing honors classes, the pre-AP, I guess you'd call the more advanced classes, and then that's when I really started struggling. I guess I was just so used to just being so far ahead. Everyone caught me. I guess you could say a tortoise in the hare. I was the hare, and I was just so far ahead of everyone else, and then at one point I hit a wall, and then everyone else kind of passed me, and I was just stuck like quicksand. You were just, at first, you're above ground, and then the more time you give it, all of a sudden, your head's below the sand, and then you're done. But luckily, I got identified, and I started getting accommodations given to me in the 7th grade, and that kind of helped me. But really, what helped me was going through Dr. Conway's intervention, and I did that beginning of my freshman year, and that's when I really truly learned how to read. I was going into freshman year, about to be a high school student, and I didn't really know how to read. I took 180 hours, no, maybe it was 180 hours to do that program. And at the end of the program, I was at a 12th grade reading level, and was able to read and comprehend on a 12th grade level going into freshman year. And that's really what saved me, was just to go through that program and to pretty much steer me in the right direction, because at that point I was already starting to, my grades were, all, C's and B's, low B's, and I was really just kind of just giving up. And then I did the mental imagery program, which that helped me a lot too. I did that last summer, and that took me a long time. It took me about 8 months. I did a program, kind of intervention, I guess you could call it. But what did you do? Did you have anything offered to you?
No, I was very blessed. My dad would let me, work through books well below my grade level for many years. So having his emotional support really helped. And then also, when I was 13, 14 years old, I gained a spiritual father as well. And through his sort of emotional support as well, I was able to catch up and read at level, about 7th grade, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, You told me you really didn't know how to read and comprehend on level until about 7th grade. That's the end of, junior high or middle school. How was high school for you?
Pretty challenging. Definitely embarrassed by teachers at certain moments, but I think I still had that narrative that I was dumb still on me. It was very difficult. Yeah, it was very.
What do you wish that you would have known or really done different in high school that could have really helped you for your future?
Yeah, I think one of the main things was my mindset. It was definitely my mindset. I like to tell kids when I'm talking to them, there was a moment in my life where I was sitting on the floor, just hearing the words of my teacher that I'm stupid, basically. And but when I was sitting on the floor, this particular moment, I was an adult, hearing her words, and I always turn it on my audience. I'm like, what words are in your head? What does your mental chatter look like? People called you names, but you're using those names on yourself now, right? But if you can change your mental chatter, if you can change the voice that you use on yourself, you can change your future. So to answer your question, I wish I would have changed my mental chatter that I was using on myself during that time. And the example that I like to give was one day I had broken my dad's computer and messed up his desk, and I was waiting to get severely punished. And he came home from work, and I'm sitting on a couch in terror, basically, and he ends up walking over to me and picks me up and holds me tight, and he says, don't worry about it, kiddo. I can buy another computer. Now, perhaps you might argue my dad should have given me a spanking or something, and maybe he should have, but instead he embarrassed me with kindness, in a sense. And that's the phrase that I would like to I wish I would have known or understood clearly as a teenager struggling through my dyslexia, as a young person. that I could embarrass myself with kindness in failure. Because the only way you're going to learn and grow in this life, in anything, and especially if you are not a neurotypical, is you have to learn to embarrass yourself with kindness in those moments. And I wish I would have known that then.
One thing I like to say is that a lot of the times what we get beat down with, we start to use for ourselves. It's like our life is a giant Jenga set, and that every time somebody says something to you, you take a block out, and then you take another block out when somebody says something, and you can't really fix those wounds because it's hard to forget something that somebody's done to you. You know, breaking a leg or breaking an arm, you know, that pain is temporary, but at some point you forget how that felt. But the words that people tell you really just last forever. You know, you don't ever forget what somebody told you or what how that made you feel. That goes on with you for the rest of your life, and at some point, for some people, that Jenga set crumbles, and you know, somebody takes a block out one too many, and then it all just falls down, and then that person is at the last they're at the last resort what they can do, and that usually ends up with the pipeline, the prison, and then them committing crimes, them doing something that they really shouldn't have done, and that they end up in jail or dead, because people don't understand what we're necessarily going through, that we're trying our hardest to do this, to keep up with everyone, but we just can't. And that, you know, that's one thing that I try to tell people, that it's like a giant game of our life's like a giant game of Jenga. You know, one too many could be severely detrimental to us.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree with you more. Another thing I always say to kids is that leaders manifest curiosity. And what that means, to me anyways, as I use it, is that just a little curiosity can sometimes change your whole trajectory or outlook on your circumstance. I'll give you an example. If I said that, if I told you of a story of a young teenager who was totally drunk, and she was driving, and then she hit this family and killed them, what would you think automatically? You would think, oh, that crazy teenager should be punished. Now hold it there. What if I told you that she came from a party and someone put something bad in her drink, and she wasn't drunk, but somebody put a pill in her drink, and so she was delusional. It changes your whole emotional outlook on the situation. Curiosity functions the same way. It functions the exact same way. You have your story, you have those words that somebody said to you. Well, probably they said those words to you because they were ignorant, right? So keeping your mind, staying curious. Well, you know what piece of the story here am I missing? A little curiosity can take you sort of into a new emotional place, a new emotional domain maybe, and change your perspective on what happened to you. So kind of redeem the things that people have said to you, or the events that happened to you, you know. I think that's just critical, you know.
Yeah, that really is something that a lot of people could use, because sometimes you might not understand why somebody looks at something like that. Because what if they had trouble in the past, and that's why they are how they are today? Like you said, with the girl, if you think that she's just drunk and she has a family, but what really happened is that she was, you know, drugged at a party, and then she went to drive. She was completely fine, and then all of a sudden it hit her, and that's when she killed the family. You know, that completely changes everything, and the whole narrative, I guess you could say. And that's the same thing with dyslexia. A lot of people think that a lot of dyslexics are dumb, stupid, you name it, we've been called it. but really we're hardworking. We're trying to get it done, but we don't have the help or the support systems or the intervention that we need to help us succeed. And if we have that, then you wouldn't we would be able to succeed in school and then succeed in college and even in life, because we've had those support groups, those interventions, all that to help us stand up again and move on.
Yeah. There's the practical piece of it with curriculum that is efficient for us to learn, and then there's the emotional piece of it. Again, something I always say often is that transformation happens when you change the story in your mind. Right? No one's denying of the pain and the suffering, but if you can understand it in a certain way, in light of a redemptive light, then the pain can sort of slowly become detoxified and stop stinging as much as it did the day before. So.
Yep.
I love your Jenga piece metaphor. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. It was kind of off the top of my head when I started using that, but once I started thinking about it more and more, it really just clicked about how that's pretty much everyone with dyslexia or anyone with any sort of autism or any disability, even if you're like a physical disability, you're called all these names, and at some point everything just comes crumbling down. And a lot of times we really do not need anything. We really don't need that to happen, to get to that point where everything just crumbles. We need strong support groups. We need we need teachers that can understand what's going on in our lives, that we are trying, that we aren't stupid or we aren't an idiot, to work with us and not against us. A lot of us feel like the teachers are working against us when they're calling us these names or making us attend detention because we're goofing around, and I wouldn't say goofing around in class, but because at some point when you can't understand what's going on, or you see all your other students succeeding, you want that attention on yourself because you're not getting that attention. So that's when a lot of times students act out in class or goof around. I feel like a lot of times we need teachers that will work with us and not against us, like I said. Because once we're feeling like we're worth something, that's when I feel like a lot of stuff will change. A lot of us will I would say a lot of us will start trying to, if the teachers do help us, we might have a good relationship with that teacher, and may try to get help with that teacher, try to attend tutorials if we need it, or try to talk to that teacher whenever we need it, even if other teachers aren't giving us our services. To have someone there to kind of help stand up for us. To wrap this all up, I want to ask you, what's your top 3 pieces of advice that you tell students that they should use in their everyday lives?
Great question. Number 1, all thriving is birthed in the wild and crazy belief that every anguish can lead you to your purpose. One more time. That all thriving is birthed in the wild and crazy belief that all of your anguish can lead you to your purpose. In other words, don't be afraid of the pain. Don't be afraid of, don't try to hide it. Find community, get people involved in it, as you're talking about being a self-advocate, explaining to teachers. But know that there is some redeeming piece to the pain that you're going through that you perhaps just can't see yet. Stay curious. Stay curious, because there's so much hope and there's so much goodness and waiting for you, but you just perhaps can't see it right now. Number one. Number two, it's kind of tied in the same, it's kind of a similar concept, but a little bit different, because how you'd apply it maybe. Try to reframe your problems as opportunities. No one denies. As I mentioned before, my home life was crazy, absolutely crazy. But I tried to change my mindset and how I saw them. Right. So even now, and I tell kids this too, just don't say you have problems. Say you have opportunities. Does that mean things are going to be fixed easy? Absolutely not. The problem, your opportunity may require years to find, but frame it in yourself as you would label it yourself, as opportunities, not just problems. Number three, embarrass yourself with kindness. Give yourself grace. Imagine in your failure, you have to, first of all, take full responsibility for everything you're doing wrong, no matter what it is, whether it's intentional or not intentional. Take full responsibility, but at the same time, embarrass yourself with kindness. Say those words to yourself if you have to, but even just imagine a big bucket of water just washing over your whole body and your whole being, that it's going to be okay. And I'm going to get over this. And as Jerry Seinfeld once said in an interview, these skateboard guys, they have, all the answers to life. They fall down, they break a bone, and they just get back up. He was asked about his success. He goes, I'm like a skateboarder. I have the same mentality. I have the same approach. I fall down, but I just keep getting up. Keep getting up. So those are my three things.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on and letting me do this interview with you. It was a pleasure. If you are struggling in school and you think you have dyslexia, there is help out there. You can go to our website at www.empowerdyslexia.org. There's templates on there to get tested. Ask teachers for help to get tested. Tell your parents. You can email us at show@empowerdyslexia.org for any help you need with any of the processes you need to go through. Thank you for watching.
Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. At Learning Ally, we are always looking for new ways to engage readers struggling with a reading deficit like dyslexia and help them work to their potential. Visit www.learningally.org to learn about the Learning Ally audiobook solution, including which of your students are eligible for access. If you live in Texas, we have great news. The Texas Education Agency provides access to the Learning Ally audiobook solution for all K-12 public and charter school students with reading deficits. Get started today by visiting www.learningally.org/Texas.